My name is Jacob Turner, and for as long as I can remember, my life seemed normal, maybe even perfect. I grew up in Seattle, Washington, in a quiet neighborhood filled with tall evergreens and the constant hum of rain against the windows. My parents, Kevin and Alison Turner, were the kind of people neighbors admired. Dad worked as a civil engineer, always patient and meticulous, while Mom was a school teacher who volunteered at every school event and baked homemade cookies every Sunday afternoon. Our family life felt warm and safe. I remember our small house filled with the smell of pine and cinnamon during the holidays, the sound of laughter round the dinner table on Sunday nights, and trips to the Oregon coast where I chased seagulls along the rocky shore. It was a simple life, but it was mine. Yet beneath the surface of these happy memories, there was always a quiet voice inside me whispering doubts, questions I didn't dare voice aloud. I never quite fit in the way I wanted to. Even as a child, I noticed the differences. My skin was lighter, my eyes hazel instead of deep brown like my parents. Sometimes relatives would give me a strange look at family gatherings, and once, when I was about 10, a cousin bluntly asked if I was adopted. I remember the quick way my parents changed the subject. That taught me to bury my questions deep inside. When I was about 7, I found myself wondering about baby photos. One rainy afternoon, I asked Mom gently, "Why don't we have pictures of me when I was a baby?" She hesitated, then gave me a soft smile tinged with sadness. "We lost most of those photos during a move when you were very young," she explained, brushing my hair back. It was a tough time for all of us. I accepted her answer, but the absence of those early memories left a hollow ache. The feeling that part of my past was missing settled deep in my chest. As I grew older, that feeling only intensified. When I was 12, my class was assigned to make family trees. Mom refused to tell me much about her side of the family, her voice growing tense whenever I pressed. Dad avoided questions about his relatives altogether. Sometimes, I overheard hushed phone calls that stopped the moment I walked into the room. The air seemed charged with secrets I wasn't meant to know. One summer, when I was 14, I was exploring the attic when I stumbled upon a dusty, old box tucked away behind some suitcases. Curious, I opened it. Inside were papers written in German, official documents with my first name on them, but the last name was unfamiliar. There was also a woman's name, Emily, I'd never heard before. I quickly took a photo with my phone, intending to ask my parents, but when I brought it up later, the box was gone. "Jacob, don't worry about things you don't understand," Mom said sharply, her eyes darkening. But I did worry. I worried more than anything I'd ever worried before. The feeling that I was living someone else's life, pretending to be a boy I wasn't, was unbearable. I started keeping my distance, trying to find answers on my own. Then, during my senior year of high school, everything changed. One chilly autumn evening, the rain tapping against my bedroom window, I was scrolling through an old social app when a message popped up from an anonymous user called True Roots. The message was simple but shocking. Jacob, your story isn't what you think it is. Your real mother is alive and searching for you. If you want to know the truth, follow the signs. My heart pounded. Who was this? How did they know my name? Was this some cruel joke? Fear and curiosity warred inside me. Finally, I typed, "Who are you? How do you know this?" The reply didn't come for days. Then, suddenly, a file appeared, a photograph. It showed me as a toddler, holding hands with a woman I didn't know. She looked tired but kind, with gentle eyes that somehow felt familiar. On the back of the photo, written in faded ink, were the words, Emily, your birth mother. Your parents lied to you. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. My whole life was unraveling, the foundation cracking beneath my feet. I didn't know where this path would lead, but I knew I had to follow it. The photograph haunted me in the days that followed. I stared at it over and over, trying to memorize every detail, of the woman's tired eyes, the way she held my hand protectively, the soft curve of her smile. I could feel something deep inside me stir, a connection I hadn't known was missing. I wanted answers. I needed them. But every time I thought about confronting my parents, a wave of fear and doubt washed over me. One Sunday evening, during dinner, I finally gathered the courage. I slid the photo across the table. My hands trembled slightly. "Who is this?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. My mom's fork paused midair. Her eyes widened, and for a moment, I thought she might cry. That's just an old photo, she said, trying to sound casual. From before you were born. My dad looked away, his jaw clenched. Jacob, we've talked about this. Some things are better left alone, but why didn't you tell me? Why all the secrets? I pressed. They exchanged a quick, tense look. My mom's voice softened, but her words were still firm. We did what we thought was best for you. The weight of their silence felt like a heavy curtain closing in on me. I realized that if I wanted to uncover the truth, I would have to do it myself. Over the next few weeks, I started piecing together fragments of my past. I revisited that box of papers in my mind, the German documents I had briefly glimpsed, the mysterious name Emily. I began researching online, searching for any clue about Emily, any trace of my real family. It wasn't easy. The internet was vast, and most of my leads felt like dead ends. But then, I received another message from Trurutz. Emily is in Germany now. She's waiting for you. The message contained an address, a small town near Munich. My heart raced. Could this really be the key? Could I find her? My parents' attitude changed. They warned me to stop the search, calling it dangerous and foolish. Why risk everything for a stranger? Dad asked one night, but I couldn't stop. The urge to know my true story burned brighter than their warnings. I made a decision. I booked a flight to Munich with the little savings I had. I told my parents I was going on a college tour, but in reality, I was chasing a past I barely understood. The day I landed in Germany, the air was crisp and unfamiliar. The city buzzed with life, foreign sounds, and strange smells. I felt both lost and determined. The address led me to a modest apartment building on a quiet street. My hands shook as I pressed the buzzer. A woman opened the door, older than the photos but with the same gentle eyes. She looked shocked and sure, then hopeful. Jacob, she whispered. I nodded, words caught in my throat. Here is an expanded part 3 with about 5,000 characters, adding more detail, emotions, and scenes around the DNA test, meeting Hannah, and the mystery of Leah. Returning home from Germany felt surreal, as if I had crossed into a new life but hadn't yet left the old one behind. The plane ride back was quiet, my mind tangled in the memories of Emily's apartment, the videos she'd given me, and the timid smile of Hannah, my half-sister. That video haunted me. Watching my birth mother being forced to sign away her rights, while my adoptive father's cold voice echoed in the hospital room, was something I couldn't erase from my mind. I realized how much of my past was buried beneath lies and silence. Back in Seattle, I wanted to know everything for certain. I ordered a DNA test through a well-known service, hoping for some clarity. When the results arrived, my hands trembled as I opened the envelope. Emily was my biological mother, confirmed. There was no doubt. But what shocked me deeply was the genetic distance between me and Alison, the woman who raised me as her own. According to the test, Alison and I shared no biological connection at all. The cousin story they'd told me was fabricated. That evening, I confronted Mom with the results. Her face paled, and tears welled in her eyes. Jacob, we did what we had to do, she whispered. Why lie? Why keep me in the dark all these years? I demanded. She couldn't answer. Instead, she turned away, her silence louder than any words. The walls I'd built around my heart began to crack. Amidst this turmoil, Emily reached out again, inviting me back to Germany. This time, to meet someone very important, Hannah, my half-sister. I flew to Munich a few weeks later, unsure of what to expect. Meeting Hannah was like seeing a living reflection of myself. She was 12, with the same hazel eyes and a smile that lit up her whole face. She was shy at first but warmed quickly. We spent the weekend wandering through the city's parks, eating pretzels and ice cream, and sharing stories about school, music, and dreams. For the first time, I felt a sense of belonging I hadn't known before. Emily told me her story, a story I had only glimpsed before. She had been just 18 when she gave birth to me, alone, scared, and pressured to give me up. My adoptive parents had promised to care for me, but the truth was far darker. Emily spoke of threats, isolation, and a legal battle she never fully understood. She handed me a USB drive. On it was a shaky, grainy video, footage of a hospital room, her signing papers while my adoptive father's voice loomed over her, cold and commanding. I watched, horrified. Returning to Seattle was harder than I thought. I confronted my parents with the evidence. They denied everything, calling me ungrateful and disrespectful. I left feeling more alone than ever, but I had found a piece of my truth. The morning sun bled through the low clouds as I stood in front of the abandoned hospital. The building looked like a corpse left to rot, its white facade now weathered gray, its windows broken like forgotten promises. I could hear the wind whistle through the cracks, carrying echoes of a time no one had spoken of for years. I wasn't sure what to expect. Leah, if that was really her name, had chosen this place carefully. Her message had been vague: come to St. Paul's Hospital. Bring no one. I'll tell you what your adoptive parents never did. My hands trembled as I pushed open a rusted door that creaked with protest. The smell of dust and decay hit me immediately. The hallways were long, silent, and filled with forgotten memories. Faded posters about vaccinations and health checkups clung to the walls, barely hanging on in the dim light. I saw a woman sitting on a bench beneath a cracked skylight. She was wearing a worn beige coat, and her gray hair was tied back loosely. She looked up as I approached. Jacob, she asked. Her voice was soft but carried a strange authority, like someone used to being obeyed. Yes, I replied. You're Leah. She nodded and stood up. I wasn't sure you'd come. I almost didn't. I wouldn't blame you, she said. But I'll you the truth. I've owed it for a long time. We walked to a small room that once might have been a nurse's station. Leah pulled out a folded chair for me and took one herself. She carried a large envelope and placed it between us. I worked here at St. Paul's back in the late 90s. I was a maternity nurse. It wasn't just a job, it was my life, she began. Emily, your birth mother, was one of my patients. My heart pounded at the mention of Emily. She came in young, 17, scared, alone, and desperate. She wanted to keep you. She fought for that. Leah paused. Her voice became heavier, but this hospital, it wasn't as kind as it seemed. There were people here, higher up, who handled special adoptions. They worked with wealthy families. People who didn't want to wait years for a child through the normal process. She opened the envelope and pulled out faded medical records, forms signed in rushed handwriting, and letters with forged stamps. Emily was pressured. Lee too. They told her she was unfit, mentally unstable, that her baby would be taken by the state if she didn't volunteer for adoption. She cried the night before you were born. I remember holding her hand. I swallowed hard. My throat felt tight. Why didn't anyone stop it? I tried, Leah said, her eyes glistening. I told her she could run, that I'd help her fight. But she was just a teenager. They scared her. And when you were born, they told her she couldn't see you. I looked at the documents again. My name, my birthday, all real but covered in layers of deception. She never got to hold me. I asked, barely above a whisper. Leah shook her head. Not once. The air between us grew heavier. My mind raced. All the moments I'd grown up thinking I was simply adopted, how many were based on lies? And my adoptive parents, I asked, did they know? Leah hesitated. They weren't innocent, Jacob. They were part of it. Not the coercion, maybe, but they paid to move up the adoption list. They made donations. They knew Emily didn't want to give you up, but they signed anyway. I felt the burn of betrayal rise in my chest. All those birthday parties, all the bedtime stories, they had been built on someone else's pain. Why tell me this now? I asked. Leah took a long breath. Because I couldn't carry it anymore. I lost my job for trying to speak out. They accused me of breaching confidentiality. No one believed me. I had no proof until now. She slid one more paper across the table. A letter from Emily to me, written the night before she was forced to sign the papers. It read, My dearest son, I don't know if you'll ever read this. They say I won't be allowed to hold you. But if you somehow find this letter, please know I never wanted to let you go. I love you. I always will. I couldn't stop the tears. Here is part 5, expanded to approximately 5,000 characters, continuing the story in the same emotional, clear, and dramatic tone. I sat in my car outside my parents' house, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. The envelope Leah had given me rested on the passenger seat like a bomb waiting to explode. My mind was buzzing with everything I had learned: the lies, the manipulation, the truth about my mother. Emily, the woman who gave birth to me, who had written a letter filled with more love in a few lines than I had felt in years. I had come back home not just for answers but for accountability. The front door opened before I could even knock. My dad stood there, wearing his usual weekend flannel, smiling like everything was normal. I wondered how many years he'd worn that same smile, hiding what he knew. "Jacob, you're early," he said. "We were just about to start dinner." "Come in." I stepped inside, barely able to look at the family photos on the wall. Each frame now felt like a fragment of someone else's story, someone else's illusion. My mom came from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. She opened her arms to hug me, but I stepped back. "We need to talk," I said. My voice was firm, colder than I intended. Now, they both looked confused. My dad nodded slowly and motioned toward the living room. We sat down, but I didn't waste time. "I met someone," I began. "A nurse from the hospital I was born in. Her name is Leah." My mom shifted in her seat. Dad narrowed his eyes. "What does that have to do with anything?" he asked. "She was there when I was born. She knew my birth mother. And she gave me this." I dropped the envelope onto the coffee table between us. "Letters, documents, proof." My mom looked at it like it was a snake. "Proof of what?" she asked, barely above a whisper. "Of the fact that Emily didn't want to give me up. That she was threatened, manipulated. And you," I pointed directly at my dad, "you paid for me. You didn't just adopt me, you bought me." The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut through bone. "Jacob, that's not," my dad started, but I cut him off. "Don't lie to me again." My mom leaned forward, her voice trembling. "We were told the mother didn't want the baby, that she had mental issues, that it was all legal and clean, but you knew better," I said. "You made a donation to speed things up. You skipped a 5-year wait list. You knew there was something wrong about it." She looked down at her hands. "We wanted a child so badly," she said. "After 3 miscarriages, we didn't think we'd ever have a family. And I'm sorry you went through that. I really am," I said. "But that doesn't justify what you did. You knew she didn't want to let me go." My dad finally spoke. "We made a decision, a choice. And we loved you." I stood up. "Then why does it feel like everything you ever gave me was stolen from someone else?" They didn't answer. The room filled with silence, thick and heavy, like smoke from a fire you never put out. "I'm going to find her," I said, grabbing the envelope. "I'm going to find my real mom." My mom's eyes filled with tears. "Jacob, I know we made mistakes. But we are still your parents. You grew up with us. We raised you." I nodded slowly. "You raised me. But you never gave me the truth. That's not love. That's control." I walked out the door before either of them could stop me. That night, I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at Emily's letter again. Every word soaked into me like ink on skin. I read it over and over, imagining her writing it in some dim hospital room, crying, hoping that maybe one day it would reach me. I knew what I had to do. The next morning, I called Leah. "Do you know where she is now?" I asked. There was a pause. "Yes, but you need to prepare yourself. Life hasn't been easy for her." "I don't care," I said. "I need to see her." She gave me the address somewhere upstate in a small town called Havenridge. It was a long drive, but I didn't hesitate. I packed a bag, filled the tank, and hit the road. Each mile that passed felt like peeling back another layer of someone else's lies. By the time I pulled into the gravel driveway of a weathered little cottage, tucked between trees, my heart was racing. The house had a porch covered in vines, and wind chimes danced in the breeze. It felt quiet, peaceful. I walked up and knocked on the door. A woman in her late 40s answered. Her hair was tied in a messy bun. She wore a flannel shirt and paint-stained jeans. Her eyes met mine, and for a moment, just a second, there was something that passed between us. Recognition. A tremble in her hands. "Can I help you?" she asked. I swallowed the lump in my throat. "My name is Jacob," I said. "I think you're my mother." She dropped the mug she was holding. It shattered on the floor, but she didn't move. She just stared at me, eyes wide, mouth slightly open. Then she whispered, "Oh my God." Tears welled up in her eyes. "And in mine." "I got your letter," I said, pulling it from my pocket. She reached out slowly, her fingers trembling as they touched the edge of the paper. And then, without a word, she pulled me into a hug. I hadn't felt warmth like that in a long, long time. "Of course," Here's part 6, with approximately 500 characters, serving as a quiet, emotional ending. We sat on the porch, side by side, as the sun dipped behind the trees. Emily held my hand like she'd never let go again. No more lies, no more missing pieces. Just truth and the beginning of something real. I didn't know what the future held, but in that moment, I wasn't lost anymore. I was home.